Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Lourdes Castro Ramirez, Secretary of California's Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency. Today is Thursday, June the 17th, 2021. This is the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council meeting. This is our quarterly meeting for taking place in the month of June. And it is just past 1 o'clock, maybe 1:04. So I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. And I think we're going to begin with roll call.
Thank you very much, Secretary. So to call for roll, Secretary Lourdes Castro Ramirez.
Here.
Council Vice Chair Emilio Ramirez.
Here.
Councilmember Amy Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Russell Atterbury.
Here.
Councilmember Alexis Berries.
Here.
Councilmember Gina Buchieri Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember Corinne Buchanan.
Here.
Councilmember Donald Kavir.
Here.
Councilmember J.C. Cooper. Councilmember Gail Gilman.
Present.
Councilmember Jody Ketcheside.
Here.
Councilmember Jennifer Loving.
Here.
Councilmember Gary McCoy.
Here.
Councilmember Toks Omashakin.
I am here, and by the way, I'm being driven in a car. That's why my camera is not on. I don't want to be bumping around on video, but here.
Understood. Thank you. Councilmember Rebecca Ruan O'Shaughnessy.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay Tornatore.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Ukashiba. And Councilmember Gustavo Velasquez.
I was not here, but this is Zach Olmstead representing HCD today.
Thank you. So it looks like we do have a quorum. Secretary?
Thank you, Evan. Thank you. And council members, thank you again for joining us for this quarterly meeting. I also want to just highlight, right, that of course this week on June the 15th, California as a state reopened back, to not quite, normal, because I don't think we will ever go back to being normal, but we are safely reopening and very much focused on continuing to ensure that as we reopen the economy, as we continue to, create those investments and opportunities for the communities that we serve, that we do so with a lens towards ensuring that it's done safely and that it's done in an inclusive manner. So just want to take a moment to acknowledge the work that each of you have been doing throughout the last 15 months, responding to this public health emergency, responding to the needs and really the supports that were necessary to ensure that individuals experiencing homelessness or at risk to become homeless were provided with the level of support and the level of urgency in terms of our response. So I know it's been a very difficult 15 months, and I hope you all know that this administration values and appreciates everything that you have done to protect those communities that were most impacted. And we know that we're not completely out of the situation, right? We know that it is important for us to continue to do our best to ensure that the COVID-19 vaccine reaches all communities, and particularly those communities that have a lower vaccination rate, those communities that are more challenged in terms of having access to the vaccine, those communities that maybe are not yet able to have access to factual information about the importance of getting vaccinated. So I invite you all to continue working with us at the state level to ensure that no one gets left behind and that all communities, particularly Black and Brown communities, low-income communities, and individuals that are experiencing homelessness or that lack a stable housing environment are able to also are able to get access to the vaccine. That's critically important to the governor and critically important to this administration. I will also mention that this this meeting that we're having remotely, and many councils and boards across the state will continue to have the ability to convene remotely, thanks to the several executive orders that were issued in response to the public health crisis. And so we intend to continue, at least for the remainder of this year, to continue to convene in this manner as we begin to assess the overall effort. We will be providing additional guidance with regard to at what point we'll be able to convene in person. I know that I very much value the opportunity to meet people in person and to build that relationship. And so I look forward to the day when we are able to be in the same room and to be able to meet each other. For those of us that we have not had an opportunity to meet in person, but stay tuned. We're not there yet. We will provide additional information. And just with regard to today's meeting, we have a full agenda. We will be spending time today to, reviewing the governor's California Comeback Plan with a specific focus on the significant and historic homelessness investments that the governor has proposed. I think many of you know that the budget includes a historic investment of $12.4 billion to continue to further our effort to address homelessness comprehensively, from housing to services, and to support some of the innovative approaches that were developed, particularly during the pandemic, such as the Home Key Initiative. We will also spend time during today's meeting hearing directly from our legislative staff concerning some of the bills that are being contemplated or that are, that are basically in the space of homelessness, right? That we have been engaged with, and also, an opportunity to hear about what is happening at the federal level. I'm really delighted to see that at the federal level, housing and homelessness continues to be a priority for the Biden and Harris administration. So we'll have an opportunity to also provide some updates. And then finally, we have a presentation today by the California Department of Education on their stakeholder input plan. I'm very excited for this presentation. And then we'll take additional opportunities for public comment, and then we'll adjourn. So we're scheduled to be in this meeting for the next 3 hours. So we'll make it as participatory as possible. So with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Evan just to briefly walk us through the for members of the audience that have joined us, how you all may be able to participate during the public comment portion.
Thank you very much, Secretary. So I'd like to let members of the public know that those who wish to comment on any item may do so when prompted. For those connected through the internet, through Zoom, please take a moment to locate the raised hand icon on your screen. This will be used to signal when you wish to comment. And for those joining us by telephone, you may press *9 to indicate that you'd like to comment. You'll then be called on and have up to 3 minutes to make your comment. And we will ask for public comment at various points throughout the meeting. Secretary?
Great, thank you. Before we go to the next item, just one last item that I did not get a chance to acknowledge was that the action plan that was created by this council has been printed in hard copy, and I hope you all have had an opportunity to receive your copy. It is really, amazing work that got accomplished and done in a very short period of time. It's very comprehensive. And please know, as we've discussed during these meetings, that this is not just an action plan in print. This is an action plan that will guide and continue to inform the work of the council and the work that the state is doing to prevent and end homelessness. So to each of you as council members who gave of your time, of your talent and your thought, thank you. Thank you for making this happen in the midst of everything else that you are doing. We very much appreciate that. So with that, we can maybe move on to the second item on the agenda, which is the adoption of the March 23rd, 2021 meeting. And at this time, just want to ask our council members if they have any edits or any comments or questions before we open it up for public comment. Okay, hearing none. Evan, do you want to check to see if there are any members of the public that would like to comment on the summary?
Certainly. Thank you, Secretary. So as a reminder, any member of the public who wishes to comment on this item, please press the raised hand icon on your screen now, or if you're connected by telephone, press *9. And we'll give just a moment to see if there are any comments. It looks like we do not have any comments on this item.
Seeing no comments, I'd like to entertain a motion from a council member.
Moved.
I'll move. I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by, was that you, Emilio?
Yes.
And second by, I can't see the,
I'll second it. This is Councilmember Gilman, second.
great, thank you. Okay, it's been moved in second. Roll call?
Certainly, thank you. Council Chair Lourdes Castro Ramirez,
Yes.
Council Vice Chair Emilio Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Amy Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Russell Atterbury,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexis Berries,
Yes.
Councilmember Gina Bucchieri Harrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Corinne Buchanan,
Yes.
Councilmember Donald Kavir,
Yes.
Councilmember Gail Gilman,
Yes.
thank you. Councilmember Jody Ketcheside,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennifer Loving, Councilmember Jennifer Loving, Councilmember Loving, we will return to you. Councilmember Gary McCoy,
Yes.
Councilmember Tokes Omishakin, Councilmember Omishakin. All right, Councilmember Rebecca Ruan O'Shaughnessy,
Yes.
Councilmember Lindsay Tornatore.
Yes.
Let's return to Councilmember Jennifer Loving. Okay, no response. And Councilmember.
here. Sorry, yes.
Sorry,
Yes.
sorry.
Sorry. Couldn't find the mute.
Perfect. Thank you. So Councilmember Jennifer Loving, yes. And Councilmember Tokes Omishakin. No response. And we do have majority approval on this item.
Fantastic. So moving on to item number 3, state's interagency coordination on homelessness. I will ask our executive officer, Julie Lowe, to go ahead and present. This is an update on the action plan for preventing and ending homelessness, as well as an update on the homeless data integration system. And so Julie, if you're on, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Secretary. Good afternoon, council members and all those in attendance. As many are aware, this past spring was an active one for this council and for council staff. A lot of the activities stem from this council's approval of the action plan and launching our Homeless Data Integration System, or HDIS. Our Deputy Secretary for Homelessness for BCSH, Ali Sutton, will provide more on HDIS in a bit when she provides a full update of HCFC's recent efforts. With that being said, in the meantime, I'd like to share some updates about what council staff have been working on in relation to the action plan and the working groups. Please advance the slide. Drawing from the commitments described in the action plan, council staff have prepared initial plans to collect progress and measures for the activities that council departments committed to in the action plan. The goal is to implement a process where council staff request and collect information biannually, twice a year. The information we collect is a step towards greater accountability of the state's efforts and the shared work of this council. Council staff will use the information we collect to prepare an annual report that describes the extent to which activities outlined in the plan are fully, partially, or not yet met. I'll describe the next steps around this process in detail in just a moment. We also have started putting together an initial plan and charter for the first working group. The goal is to flight one working group per quarter, starting once the new fiscal year begins next month. The first working group will be focused on maximizing impact of state funding and programs on homelessness, otherwise known as the State Funding and Programs Working Group. Next slide, please. I'll begin by sharing a bit more on what we mean by collecting measures for activities. We'll start with collecting activities that are listed in the action plan as taking place in fiscal year 2021. So it'll be just in time for the close of the current fiscal year. Council staff will share out a template for departments to preview as early as we can, with the goal of sending requests in August. Our goal with this first collection period is to start off with an initial template that we anticipate may be revised and improved as we progress. We intend to get the requests out no later than August, but again, our goal is to get it out as early as possible so council departments can plan for this request. We anticipate that the window for collection around the fiscal year 2021 activities will close in September. Again, I want to reiterate that our goal is to ask for just the right amount of information so that it's simple and the information we collect will be the right size so that we aren't so that it isn't an onerous ask on council departments. And yet we also want to be able to provide a comprehensive report back to this council. Next slide, please. This slide provides a timeline. All of these slides will be posted, or I think are currently posted on our website, and we'll certainly distribute this. The slide provides a timeline. First will be two things to flag. First, we'll be providing a report back to this council in September, just on progress of how collection's going. This council can also anticipate a draft be delivered in time for the November meeting. Of course, we would distribute that report in advance. We've also walked out a similar timing for the collection of the initial 2 quarters of the next fiscal year. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we've also made good progress in building a work plan for the working group. This initial group will be focused on goals related to advancing the coordination of state funding for homelessness. We anticipate this will be another opportunity to strengthen the state's accountability to assure that state funds are well coordinated and impactful. The timeline associated with this working group are displayed on the current slide. And we're on track to start recruitment in the coming weeks in July, with the first meeting taking place before we close the first quarter, as was committed in the action plan. Next slide, please. And I'd like to just zoom out for a moment and provide a big picture of how council staff is moving to an active and routine schedule of work between council meetings in preparation for delivering scheduled reports and documents at our quarterly council meetings. So I think some of this is in pretty small font, but I think the takeaway here is that we'll be doing some work in between meetings. At the council meetings, we'll be either providing some sort of report that is a written document around the progress of both the activities and measures and or the working groups. And with that, I'll turn it back to Secretary Castro Ramirez, our chair, to facilitate questions or comments from council members regarding anything I've just shared.
Thank you, Julie. I will just go ahead and open it up for questions or comments from council members. I think as as you can see from Julie's presentation, and back to the intent of the action plan, right? It's not the intention, for us to just develop a document, but really to develop a document to drive our focus and activities. And the timeline that Julie has presented, demonstrates how we intend to implement and make that happen. But very much like to open it up to see if folks have any questions.
I'll go ahead and start. This is Russ from Calvet. A question about the timeline here. It says in July, you're going to, I think it says recruit. What is that recruitment about? And my second part to that question is how do we know have we already done a role of who is on each of these working groups, and has that been sent to us?
So we're very much in the planning process of that. I think there's certainly, the recruitment is really around contacting state departments, and written into the action plan is how those outside of state can act in an advisory role. So those specific roles are not yet finalized. For obvious reasons, we want the input of council members and such. So that the July is really the month we anticipate crystallizing who might be on this council. Or I'm sorry, in this working group. My apologies.
Julie, can I ask a question?
Sure.
You said that you wanted the input from the council. Does the council have input on who gets named onto the working group?
Yes.
Meaning
So this is the working group that is primarily focused on state staff. This specifically is, but there is opportunity for folks to act in an advisory capacity. We currently are still working out the governance and infrastructure around that, but I think now is a great time to start weighing in on that. So we very much welcome your input.
Thank you.
Hey, Julie, this is Russ again, and sorry, but so will the working groups or will the council staff decide on the, it says request and collect, I think, measurables in August and September. So will the council staff decide what those measurables are, or is it the working group that will decide that? So that
the measures are easy because we will collect them as listed. And so our goal in preparing for that, in this initial collection period for fiscal year 2021, it's a little bit more straightforward. There's a lot of stuff that I think we've already identified. And what we'll do is we'll provide some sort of template to department staff, either verifying that we have the right information, those points at which we really, we'll certainly want to get your eyes on what we consider as sort of the measures. And we'll also be requesting at the same time for those that we don't already have in hand.
Just giving time to see if there are any other questions. Julie, did you get a chance to also provide an update on HCIS?
So Secretary, we had given the Deputy Secretary of Homelessness's update in the council department updates. It sort of more naturally fell in that place, and she'll be providing that update.
Okay, fantastic. That's great. So if anyone's interested in joining any of the committees, because I'm hearing you say, Julie, that we're starting off with the state agencies, please reach out to Julie, and then, Julie, if you can just sort of continue to keep the council members apprised of the progress that we're making. So, we're meeting quarterly, and there's activity that is planned between now and the next time we meet.
Yeah, and I'll also flag that sort of our starter dough, our starting point around what departments will be represented in this particular working group are listed in the action plan. So we'll really start there. And of course, we'll be consulting with individual departments on who the actual human involved in that will be. But yeah, we very much welcome any input you have.
Okay, before we move on to the next item, I just want to make sure that we don't have any additional questions or comments from council members. Okay, seeing none, we will go to item number 4, which is an opportunity for us to hear from council members and the major activities that have taken place since our last meeting. Also an opportunity to hear about any upcoming activities in the quarter ahead. And because, of course, we're very much still in the budget phase, if there's any sort of information of relevance with regard to funding and program deadlines, this is a great time to be able to share that. So I will turn this over to our Deputy Secretary for Homelessness, Allie Sutton.
Thank you, Secretary. Good to be with everyone today, and just want to say a big thanks to everyone who submitted written comments or written updates. We're going to continue to keep doing that as the council. I just know there's so much going on with all of our departments and really want to make sure we're creating space for those kinds of conversations. So just a big thanks to everyone who did that. Those are up on our webpage and will continue to be up there. So if you can't get to everything and those great updates today, just a reminder to our audience members that the full write-ups are on our website. So I just, as it has been with many of us, it continues to be a really busy time for our HCFC staff. I'm really excited to be able to share a few of our efforts with you all here quickly. So first and foremost, our HCFC staff team has actually continued to grow pretty significantly and take on quite a few more responsibilities over the last few months here. So as many of you may know or may remember, 18 months ago or so, there was about 7 of us on the HCFC staff team. We are currently a team of 26 and have brought on 6 folks just in the last, since our last council meeting. So really excited about the additional opportunity to support the work that's been going on at the state with these folks. And just a shameless plug, given some of the conversations we're seeing, obviously we don't know where the budget lands, but we do expect to have quite a bit more work to do in the coming year, and expect to have some additional staff with that. So this is my shameless plug to all of you that if you know good, passionate folks, we will most likely be doing another round of recruiting in this new fiscal year. I also just wanted to mention, I think some of you have already seen her in your inbox, but one of our newest hires is our new council specialist, Giselle Sanchez. So she's a really vital part. She'll continue to be a really vital part of the communication with all of our council members. And just wanted to make sure you had a chance to see her face here today. So you can put a face to the name as she starts sending emails about our updates and our council meetings moving forward. So really, really glad to have her here with us. Other things just real quickly around our grants efforts at HCFC. Our grants team continues to have their hands full reviewing about 100 HAP applications. So the second round of HAP is we're in the midst of that right now, and working with our HEAP grantees to meet their June 30th spending deadline. So as you may all recall, I know this doesn't seem like 3 years ago, but HEAP was a 3-year program of $500 million, and the program actually ends in just a few weeks on June 30th. So the HCFC team really continues to provide some really intensive technical assistance to the 54 grantees who received that funding, just to really make sure we're spending all of that funding down here in these last few weeks and making sure that we're making the impact we know those dollars can have. So just we'll have a more formal sort of final wrap up update for everyone in our next council meeting. But our latest fiscal data we have is just through the end of March, and we were already seeing there about an 87% spend down rate. So we are pretty confident, given all of the conversations we've been having these last few weeks and months, that all of our grantees are on track to fully spend down those funds. And we know that it's not just about spending the funds, it's about how and what impact they had. So we're also really excited. We've been engaged with a partnership with CSU Sacramento to contract out for a few qualitative case studies that will be coming out here over the course of a handful of months through the end of the calendar year. and just sort of trying to do other things to sort of show the impact that that funding had across the state. So briefly, and we'll probably have more to update on this at our next meeting, but the case studies, we sort of chose to focus on topics that we saw really bubbling up within HEAP, really figuring out, we saw a lot of our grantees doing work around how to reach out to unsheltered communities. So we're going to have some additional information and sort of qualitative information about how folks use that funding for that. Also really thinking about permanent housing for transitional aged youth, thinking about what sort of developmental appropriateness. This was often the first time communities had gotten a specific youth set aside grant. And so there's a lot of really interesting learnings, I think, from that kind of work. And then also just because of the flexibility of HEAP, we saw a lot of pivoting at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic to really try to meet the need. And so we want to capture sort of how communities did that and how HEAP had a piece of that. So the first case study of that will be out in July. We'll have the additional 2 sort of later in the fall and continue to do some additional work leading up to the final report around HEAP. But sort of lots of stuff going on there as we wrap up that program. And then round 2 of our homeless housing assistance and prevention program. As I mentioned, there's 100 HAP applications that our team has been reviewing and going back and forth with grantees on, have met all of our statutory deadlines on that, and the applications have been formally approved and are now just sort of going through the routing process and contract execution and fund disbursement for those. So having some really good conversations with grantees around some of the new goals that were required for HAP round 2, particularly around racial equity, and really having some great partnership with folks on sort of how to move the needle with this funding moving forward. And with that, I will just mention, I think we've mentioned this a couple times in this meeting, but with some of the funding on the admin side for HAP, we are doing some pretty extensive technical assistance contracts. We actually have a technical assistance RFP live right now, specific to sort of performance-based contracting for grantees. So folks can find that on our CalProcure website. It also is up on our website, and we're having deadlines for those proposals by July 16th. So really excited. We've been hearing a lot from grantees and have done some informal webinars with them around just how to have better contracts with their subgrantees, and have seen really intense interest for that. And so we're really excited about the opportunity to provide some deeper level of technical assistance through this new contract. And then moving on just real quickly on our HGIS side, as the secretary mentioned, we are really thrilled to report that the Homeless Data Integration System is up and running as of April. So, if folks haven't had a chance to go and take a look at it and play around with some of the Tableau dashboards, we'd really encourage folks to do that. It really does feel like for the first time, the state and our partners have a much clearer picture of that full system of homelessness. And so we're just sort of at the tip of the iceberg, as we say, about what we think we can learn around the data that we have within HGIS. But really allowing us to just, for background, I feel like we've talked about this a lot, but just a reminder on what this sort of system is we've gathered service provider level data from all of our 44 local continuums of care into one warehouse. We sort of deduplicated all of that, so we have individualized data. We can really see at a statewide level and create tools around that data to really help us learn both what's working and where we think improvement is needed. And so we're doing a lot of internal research on this stuff right now. It really is a critical part of measuring the progress of our action plan. So we will be using it in tandem with a lot of our action plan goals and making sure we can measure the progress we're talking about through HGIS. And we'll just sort of mention very quickly, I feel like I'm taking up too much space already because there's so much going on, but we do really expect that HGIS is a very intentional continuous quality improvement effort. We launched this first beta version. We know there's a lot more to do. We will be doing quarterly updates of both new data, more accurate data, as we get more information from COCs on what they're submitting to us and just how we can better build the system. So that we'll be doing a lot of that over the next, every quarter we'll be doing sort of updates to the system. We're joking about it as sort of when you have to update your app. So we're updating the app quarterly, and we'll be getting new information and new data in that, and sort of new and adding new information and learnings as well every quarter. So really excited about that. I'm very excited to work and sort of hear from you all about, as it gets going further, the kinds of questions you'd like the system to answer so we can continue to be responsive to need. We've already been able to do a little bit of that with our state partners and expect the opportunity to do even more of that moving forward. So we'll just say we're really excited about the opportunity within that system as it formally launched a few months ago. So on that, I'm going to hand it over to partners. I think JC wasn't able to join us after all. I will just mention in those written updates, the Department of Healthcare Services did submit a written update. So while she's not here to give the DHCS update, there is one in the written materials. I know Gustavo also isn't able to join, but Zach, really glad that you're here to provide a quick update from HCD and all the great work you're doing. So I'll hand it over to you.
I think that meant hand over to Zach, but I'm not sure. So
Did.
well if I'm on mute. I mean, we have as Ali said, there's a lot, so I won't go into everything that's in our written updates. Maybe I'll focus on a couple of things of note that might be of interest to our partners and the public. In particular, HomeKey, which was a major effort, of course, last year, and I'm sure has been talked about here. We did issue a report to the legislature on April 1st, which is also on our website. That might be of particular interest to the public and to members here, which outlines a lot of the outcomes that we had at the time of our initial project reports that came earlier in the year. In total, nearly 6,000 units created, pretty diffuse geographically, if I may opine, having worked in this space for a long time. It's actually probably one of the most geographically equitable and dispersed affordable housing kind of projects or programs I've ever seen, in terms of you look at a lot of counties that have not done anything in the affordable housing or homelessness space, having projects in HomeKey. A couple Native American tribes received awards, things like that. It was pretty exciting, especially given the speed that had to occur there. So obviously we are hopeful and optimistic that we will be continuing this work, given it seems agreement amongst the administration and the legislature to do something in this space. I think the final details we're of course awaiting, just like everybody else. And maybe I'll, if I can, take a moment and say, a reminder, this is not just hotel motel acquisitions. Certainly that was a big part of the work, but there were many more eligible uses. And in fact, about 20 of the 94 projects were not that. They were, acquisition of commercial space, modular housing, basically any sort of opportunity. So while hotels and motels, I think, will be a big part of the work moving forward, those were uniquely distressed asset in 2020, and maybe there'll be a more balance as the years come, or as the program continues. So I would just mention that to you all, because as you guys work locally or with your partners, to remind, it's about creating the flexibility with our local partners that are quite critical to do what we can to rehabilitate existing structures or adaptive reuse or whatever you want to call it, to provide as much housing as quickly as we can. And the other thing I'll mention, there's a lot in our written updates. So, we continue to deploy funding from the CARES Act. Certainly recognize that we're just one piece of the puzzle, as Ali mentioned, in that whole system of funding, right? We have been providing quite a bit of funding throughout, from HCD, from HCFC, from other partners, to our continuums of care, to our cities and counties. We have a couple of those big infusions from the CARES Act, both a couple rounds of our Emergency Solutions Grant program, as well as some CDBG funding, which is a little broader. And so those continue to get deployed. They were rolled out in a couple of different phases based on when the monies became available from the feds. And so those are, I think, some of the most relevant. We continue to, what we're doing on ESG is amending the initial contracts that we made, because there was 2 rounds of ESG funding as the funding became available from the federal government. And so those are near completion on the ESG side. The CDBG stuff, which has much longer expenditure deadlines, is also happening. We're into our second round there in terms of the contract finalization with our partners. And I will just maybe note, especially because we all are working heavily in this space, we are very mindful that it's not just our monies that they're receiving, it's, programs and resources from you all. And, we're doing our best to make sure that all of our grantees can not only be compliant with our federal funds, but, are also, using those funds in a way that works to complement the entire system that they're dealing with. So I will leave it at that, because I know there's a lot of people to talk, but there are some written updates, and happy to answer any questions if it allows for discussion.
Great, thank you, Zach. I think we'll hand it over to Corinne to give an update on the Department of Social Services.
Thanks, Ally. Hi, folks. Corinne Buchanan here, Assistant Director for Housing and Homelessness for the California Department of Social Services. So I thought I would share today a few updates on programs that are proposed to be expanded through the governor's proposed May revised budget. And I thought I would just take a moment to tell you about our approach and a little bit about the programs that are proposed to expand. So I will just do always have to do this, my quick shout out to how awesome HDIS is and how helpful it is as state departments in understanding the true need across our state in terms of people experiencing homelessness, and in particular, understanding the needs of specific subpopulations. So that's my shout out. I just want to say, I think when we think about the expansions that I'll describe just now, I think what will be really key to the success of these expansions is continued partnership between the state agencies, local governments, community organizations, continuums of care to help us build on the success we've had to date in these programs and to be able to reach many more Californians in need. In fact, to try to get closer to meeting the full unmet need. So we look forward to working with all of the departments and many other stakeholders who are involved in this council. All right, so I'll divide it into the two sort of buckets in terms of the programs that are proposed to expand. And the first is our work around serving families experiencing homelessness. And there's a proposed expansion to a program called the CalWORKs Housing Support Program, which assists families who are receiving CalWORK, so part of our social safety net, to quickly obtain permanent housing, primarily through a rapid rehousing model. The second program proposed to expand under the budget is called Bringing Families Home. And it's a program that serves families who are experiencing homelessness who are involved in the child welfare system, with the goal of reducing the number of families who are separated, sort of to increase family reunification and prevent foster care placement. Next, I'll talk about a number of programs that specifically serve seniors and adults with disabilities that are proposed to expand and to deepen impact through the budget proposal. And the first is the Housing and Disability Advocacy Program. And this is our program that serves people through housing interventions very linked to a very important disability benefits advocacy at the county level. So connecting people to those two pieces so that ultimately people can get connected to benefits such as SSI to support their long-term housing stability. The next is our Home Safe program, which serves people who are in the connected to adult protective services. So that would be primarily older adults who are victims of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, and making sure that we can provide the types of housing interventions to ensure that folks are prevented from becoming homeless, and then also to end homelessness for those individuals who are currently experiencing homelessness. Then I'll next move on to our Project Room Key effort, and I've talked about this over the last number of council meetings to keep you all abreast of what's happening with Project Room Key. As a reminder, this is our effort to provide non-congregate shelter to people experiencing homelessness as a response to COVID. And it is really focused on serving people who are either positive for COVID, exposed to COVID, or people who are high risk for serious complications. And to date, I'm happy to share that we have provided safe shelter for over 42,000 individuals all across the state in the over 16,000 rooms that were secured as part of this effort. And it continues today. I know that we may have reopened, but the need for this type of non-congregate sheltering setting continues. There are well over 8,000 hotel rooms that are currently occupied as a part of this project, providing safe shelter tonight to over 11,000 individuals. We, in the budget, have also proposed additional funding that would allow us to continue non-congregate sheltering and also really deeply support the locals as they now have, in many ways, shifted their focus towards supporting rehousing out of Project Room Key to make sure that individuals, when they do exit Project Room Key, can be connected to permanent housing, in particular those individuals who have had longer lengths of stay, which tend to be those individuals, particularly seniors and people with underlying health conditions who are connected to the project. We've also been working with a really fantastic technical assistance provider called Population Change Institute, and they have been doing very specific TA related to supporting those positive housing exits out of Project Roomkey. I'm happy to share that almost 7,000 individuals who have exited Project Roomkey to date have been connected to permanent housing. The work that Population Change Institute is doing has also been focused on supporting the reimbursement through FEMA for this important work. If folks may recall that this work is actually 100%, can be 100% reimbursed by FEMA, and helping communities to maximize their other local funds around homelessness by drawing down as much of the resources as we can from FEMA. So that's been a big part of the work as well. In addition, I'll just add that we have been working hard on the design of a newly proposed program for next fiscal year called the Community Care Expansion Program. That's a capital program similar to HomeKey in that way, that could support the acquisition and rehab specifically of residential settings that can serve seniors and people with complex health conditions, particularly in licensed settings. There has been a decrease in the number of availability of these settings to serve people who are on SSI and also people who are homeless. So this is an opportunity to try to expand that important part of our housing continuum in California. One last update is that we are working really closely with our colleagues at the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency and HCD to try to get the word out about the COVID-19 rent relief program. So we're working very closely with our grantees across the state to make sure that folks know about this really important rental assistance program. We know that there will ultimately be an end to the eviction moratorium, and no one in California should be evicted for inability to pay rent because we have these fantastic federal resources to help us do this important work. Big thanks to HCD for their partnership on that one. And I'll end there. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you, Corinne. I think we'll hand it over to Don to give an update for CalHFA.
Ellie, may I ask a quick question of Corinne?
Amy, do you mind if we wait till the very end and see how much time we have for questions? I know I'm getting pinged by our coordinators about timing, so if you don't mind. But hold on, I'm sure we should have time. I just want to make sure we get through all of our updates because
you got it.
Not surprising, everyone's got a lot on their plate right now, so it's good updates.
Thanks, Ellie. This is Don Kabir from CalHFA. I'll keep it brief. We provided a detailed update in the council package today, but I would just quickly update you that the Special Needs Housing Program, which is a program that CalHFA has collaborated with local governments to utilize their MHSA funds to finance the development of permanent supportive housing for individuals that have a serious mental illness or who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. And that program is currently being wound down, but we have a pipeline of approximately 19 projects left coming through the pipeline that are all scheduled to close construction before the end of June 2022. And at the conclusion of those projects being built out, they will add an additional nearly 1,100 units of permanent supportive housing into California. So there, like I said, there's a more detailed breakdown of the status of that program in the package today. And that concludes my briefing. So you should be back on time now, Allie.
Thank you, John. Gina, for CalOES, do you have any updates on your end?
Hi, we might be receiving additional funding for our homeless youth program, which is exciting for us, which will help us expand that. As far as my other updates, I have updated that in the briefing documents. Thank you.
Didn't mean to make everyone feel like they can't give their updates now. I'm sorry if I've gone too far the other direction.
Okay.
I don't know, Tokes, if you're in a spot to give an update for Caltrans. I know you also provided a written update if not. I think he might be in transit. Okay, so maybe switch over to Russ, an update for Calvet.
Gosh, the mute button again. So yeah, I'll just briefly mention some things about I put it in the written report, but our Veterans Housing and Homeless Prevention Program recently released another $75 million round 6 notice of funding availability. And I just realized I didn't put the links to our website or HCD that has some great information about the program too, but I can do that in the chat section. We held another stakeholder input session and a tribal leader listening session to inform folks about the changes and to promote the funding. And then Veterans Village of Cathedral City celebrated its groundbreak in April, and that was our first VHHP project to be built in the Coachella Valley area. So that was pretty exciting. And then we had a grand opening for a funded Edwin M. Lee project in San Francisco. And our Secretary Imbasciani from our department spoke there. And I believe Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, also spoke at that event. So that's pretty neat. And lastly, just a quick update on some numbers. The projects and units that we have completed to date so far with VHHP is we've completed 35 projects with 1,220 units either already leased or current being leased. And then projects and units that are under construction, 27 projects are under construction, and then that means another 1,014 units coming up soon. And then pending construction, 10 projects, 305 units pending. So pretty excited about that stuff coming on. That is it from me.
Great, thank you, Russ. Rebecca, for community colleges, do you want to provide your update?
Sure. Really for the community college system, we're looking at investments in ways to better support students, really access throughout their entire learning journey with our colleges. So it's really multifaceted. So we're looking at financial aid and basic needs, including housing and various identity categorical programs support holistically to students on campus, and at the same time, we're supporting strategies to reduce the total cost of attendance for students, including lower textbook costs and affordable housing. So there are multiple things. In one way, we're trying to reach that equilibrium of making things cheaper for college students, at the same time putting more dollars into their pockets so that they can afford college. So we're really looking at what that looks like comprehensively through the continuum. So specifically, the housing program on campus, we have a pilot program called the California Community Colleges Homeless and Housing Insecurity Pilot. And currently 14 colleges are using the rapid rehousing model, about $9 million of annual budget. I know a very small drop in this housing bucket, but really implemented in February 2020. A big part of our work there, we're kind of wrapping up in our first year for implementation, is really understanding what has worked, what hasn't worked, and specifically how is housing plus various wrapped around services has supported our students in advancing their student success outcomes. Right. So we're really in that infrastructure building phase, and then understanding and learning and research phase. So then we can understand how do we advocate for more funding, but really focus our investments in places that make sense for our system. And most importantly, like what other people said, is really about connecting to all of you and all the momentums that's out there, so that our students can really be plugged into the robust system that can really support them on and off campus. So on the parallel track, so the HIP program for us is really focusing on services. On a parallel track, we're working collaboratively with our California Community Colleges Foundation on student housing advocacy efforts. So that's much more around potentially building student housing, but that builds into our college physical resilience and health conversation. Colleges are not really in the business of building houses. So what does that look like for us? And what we want to be very intentional and focused, right? And support colleges if and when they are ready. And more importantly, is really to help them be connected to, again, all the momentum around housing and potentially housing for students, and housing for special segments of student population. What that looks like, again, bringing back to student outcome. How is that going to advance our student success metrics? We are also paying special attention to a few items on the May budget revise relating to basic needs. One of them is we have, there's an ongoing funding of $30 million to support basic needs centers and coordinators on campus. So again, it's really, thinking about how we bring all of our existing programs together and how do we bring external partners on campus or kind of refer our students to these partners with clear process and outcome, so then our students can really have that safety net while they're on campus with us. And then the second piece is there's a trailer bill language with a one-time funding of $100 million to support students in addressing food and housing insecurity. So that speaks to a lot of, we have to think about our intentionality and program design, right? How do we better strategically invest those dollars, one-time dollar, to really focus on building that infrastructure and conditions so that we know in the future what to invest in, because those are high leverage investment points. Also, the May revise includes $4 billion in one-time funding over 2 years for student housing grants to be administered through the state treasurer and the California School Finance Authority. We still need to understand what that looks like for us as a system. In terms of collaborations, also a lot of things are happening. We have made significant gains with our conversation with the CDSS relating to CalFresh student eligibility. We have come to agreement that in terms of CalFresh exemption for all California community college students, if they have a declared major, or for students who are participating in a career technical education program, that will meet the exemptions for the CalFresh student eligibility. So that's huge for us. We would never be able to do this without the conversation and collaboration with CDSS, and we're aiming to roll those new exemptions out in the fall of 2021. We're having a lot of conversations in terms of process-wise, what does that look like at the county level and whatnot, but really appreciate that type of collaboration and direction that we're heading into. And I know CDSS is also doing CalSOLS, which is an automated welfare system. So we're really looking at having those conversations and think about how higher education and students can be part of that conversation. Another collaboration that's happening among all the segments within higher education is in the California Higher Education Basic Needs Alliance, which is called CHEBNA. That really is focusing on how do we promote available resources across our segments to share best practices across those segments as well. So we have a year plan of webinars really addressing different things, varying from food insecurity to mental health, to housing, and also to state and federal legislative updates. So a lot of things are happening as well there. I'm gonna wrap up my verbal updates here. We are, even though we're new, I feel like I'm new, right, to this council, but our efforts have been ongoing. So it's super excited for me to be learning and also making connections when all of you are providing updates. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Rebecca. I know it seems like a lot, but there's just a lot going on right now. And so it's good for everybody to sort of hear from one another. And so appreciate it's really hard to fit in the amount of work you all have been doing in the 3 months since we met last in like a 5-minute update. So that's appreciate the written updates too. I know that can seem like a lot, but it's a good balance, I think. And I think unless we get Tokes back here, Lindsay, I think you're our final update. So I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. So I'll save the majority of our update for our item. Thank you very much for allowing us to have some time on the agenda to share some of our plans around the American Rescue Plan Act, and also a call to action for all of you council members and also members of the public to engage in giving us some input on informing our decisions. But I do want to just highlight quickly, on Monday, the 14th this week, the Learning Policy Institute released a research report on students experiencing homelessness, the conditions and outcomes of homelessness among California students. And this is a great report because it contributes to an ongoing effort to better understand the conditions and experiences that our students who are experiencing homelessness are experiencing. They drew on data that was reported by the California Department of Education. And while most of the data came from 2018-19, the learnings and findings do provide some implications for current day. So I just wanted to highlight that for everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lindsay. And I also just want to call out that there's some really good resources that have been shared in the chat for folks as well throughout these updates. So I just want to make sure people are seeing those. So I will hand it back over to the secretary. I will say, I do think we have a few minutes for questions, Amy, if you have yours and if others have some. I expect our next item won't take quite as long given where we're at with the budget right now. So I'll hand it over to you, Secretary.
Thank you, Ali. Just again, tremendous, work being done all across, state government. So thank you all so much for both your written reports and the verbal reports. Amy, I'll turn it over to you. I know you had a question, so let's go to you.
Thank you. I hope it's quick. Corinne, it was great to hear specifically about the community care, like capital for the community care. Actually, it was great to hear everybody's report and all that's going on. I guess I was curious about the kind of the operating side of the community care facilities, because I understand that has also been a challenge in addition to the capital side. And I just didn't know if there was anything going on in that area too.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Amy. It's a question we have gotten a lot, and I think it's an important question. So I think the question is really about, we know we need to preserve and expand the residential settings that specifically can serve seniors and people with complex disabilities. But we also know that those folks need a significant level of support. So part of the role of the work through the community care expansion is about leveraging a lot of the fantastic efforts that are happening at the local level through counties. We know oftentimes counties partner, particularly through their behavioral health systems, with these types of facilities. But I think the really big opportunity for us on the operating and services side is actually through some of the proposals that are a part of the home and community-based services spending plan. These are new dollars that are a part of about $3 billion in funding through the American Rescue Plan, specifically for home and community-based services. The spending plan, which was released by the Department of Healthcare Services and that is described a little bit in J.C. Cooper's update for this council, include many new assisted living waivers, as well as a residential continuum pilot program for vulnerable populations, both of which are resources that can be used to fund medical and personal care services in both independent housing as well as licensed settings. So good opportunities to support what it really takes to help someone become stable in a variety of different housing typologies. Hope that helps. I'm happy to send you some. I'll put some info in the chat.
Great. Thanks so much. I appreciate that.
Right. Just wanting to check to see if any other council members have questions or comments. Okay, seeing none. Thank you also for, as Ali mentioned, for the resources and the links to additional reports and opportunities that are available. The report, the written report that consolidates everybody's update is very comprehensive. It's almost 20 pages long. So it's, again, sort of an indication of how much good work is happening across. And also a reminder, right, the HCFC's role is to be a leader in helping to coordinate across systems and helping to be sort of a convening and a clearinghouse for all things, preventing and ending homelessness. And so I think, I very much appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into providing, the reports that are being presented. So with that, we're just a few minutes, over sort of our allotted time, but there was just so much rich information that, I think that it was well worth, the time. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, this is an opportunity for us to get a more sort of detailed update from our agency through HCFC on the 2021 California state budget with a focus on the governor's proposed investments in housing and homelessness. As I mentioned early on in the presentation, that the governor has advanced historic proposal with $12.4 billion for preventing and ending homelessness, and $9.3 billion to address housing stability, housing affordability, and housing preservation. And so again, just want to acknowledge the leadership of Governor Newsom and the leadership of our state legislature. We're working as we speak to continue to hammer through the final details of this budget. And I think one of the things that it's not lost on any of us is the commitment that the governor and the state legislature has to ensure that we are doing everything possible to provide housing opportunity, housing stability, and services to some of the members of our state that have been hardest hit, that continue to not have access to dignified, affordable housing and the supports necessary to be able to reach their full potential. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our Deputy Secretary for Homelessness, Ali Sutton, to walk us through this.
Thanks, Secretary. Yeah, so, I think many of you, I believe, were probably on the May Revise webinar we did a handful of weeks back. And as you are hearing through a lot of the updates, there's a lot that was proposed in the governor's California Comeback Plan, including over $12 billion to address homelessness and housing instability in our state. I also would sort of mention that both his plan and the legislature's proposal are both in that category of over $12 billion to address this issue. So I know many of you are watching very closely. Negotiations between the administration and the legislature continue. Right now, they're very much in the midst of that, and we don't have final details on sort of where the state budget will land just yet. But what we do know, and I think that we need to be just ready for, regardless of how it all shakes out fully, is that homelessness is a clear priority for both the governor's administration as well as the legislature, and that we really expect to see some really truly unprecedented investments to address homelessness in our state. So while we don't have all the details, I think it's fair to say that this group can expect to be very busy in this coming year. And we're really optimistic that this budget will allow for continued investments in some of the great work we've been doing in Room Key and Home Key, and really focusing on sort of the collaborative efforts for preventing and ending homelessness in California. So with a real focus, I think, and you'll see this in a lot of the proposals on both sides, to ensure that homelessness in California is rare, brief, and one time, very much in line with our action plan. So while we don't have a lot of the details in the moment, I will say our plan for right now, just to give everybody a heads up, we really do expect here in the coming days to have a more formal final agreement and a signed budget. When that happens, we will be putting together a letter for all council members detailing where all of this shook out and sort of next steps for some of that work. So we will be communicating with you all as soon as we know more. It is kind of an awkward time to be having this meeting, as we very much expect something at any moment, but we're working through a lot of that in live time. And the administration and the legislature are working through that in live time. So we will be, like I said, we will be sending out a letter with more details, but I think we're really pleased to understand that this is going to be a real priority of this budget, and that, yeah, we're gonna have our work cut out for us, and we're gonna be really excited about the opportunity for making really significant change on this issue throughout our state. It is that kind of investment that can significantly move the needle on this issue. So while we're waiting to see the final details, I think the spirit of what we know is going to come down. We're really excited about. So without sort of being able to say much more in this moment, I'm happy to hand it back over to you, Secretary, to have some discussion with the group and what we know or can discuss at this point.
Thank you so much, Ali. Just, in terms of the overarching sort of areas of focus when it comes to addressing homelessness comprehensively, and Ali and I sort of mentioned this, right? It's very much about ensuring that there is a focus on homelessness prevention, a focus on rehousing, a focus also on building on some of the innovative approaches such as Home Key. And so the budget proposal does include a proposal for 3.5 billion of the 12.4 billion for a scaling of the Home Key initiative. And so I think with that, just let's open it up, see if council members have any additional comments or any questions regarding the state budget and the May revision with a specific focus on housing and homelessness.
Secretary, I had a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Yes.
My questions, Ali, I guess before I'll go into my questions, I do have a request. Well, I really appreciate and look forward to the letter that you'll be putting together once we have the numbers finalized, which we know will be between now and June 30th. But we do know that trailer bill language and framing for some of the investments won't be finalized till later in July, beginning of August. I'd like to request also that the council receive a letter from staff outlining trailer bill language that is adopted, particularly if it shifts or reframes how any of the funds could be delivered or executed on. So I think it's two things I'm hoping you can provide to the council. One, just a letter of what the funding lands on, but to me, I think the devil's in the details, and what's far more interesting is what the trailer bill language will look like for shaping the program. So that was that was just a statement. My question I guess I have is, and we know it's still being negotiated, so it may not be 1 billion ongoing that's in the state and assemblies budget package, but I wanted to know if you felt that with all the recent staffing that we've added to the council, and we're hearing from a community perspective on the ground that a lot of funds, while they'll still be dispersed to other departments, will be sitting with the Homeless Coordinating and Finance Council. I wanted to know what your assessment is on staff capacity to get that money out the door rapidly and effectively. That's one question. And then my second question is if you've been thinking at all about how to sort of execute in a way that has a little more of an accountability for cities and counties working together. So those were just two questions I had for staff.
Yeah, absolutely, Gail. And so I think on that first piece, that the letter around the budget itself will come much quicker. That trailer bill language we will need to pull together from all of our state partners on the call right now. So heads up, you should be seeing a request for you all to send that over as that gets finalized and we can compile and get that out. Just knowing that might take a bit more time than the initial letter. And then on the funding side of things, I mean, I think you heard me in my initial spiel of the staff is growing. We expect to continue to grow given some of the proposals that are coming. And so I think we do expect we will need more staff to administer that kind of funding. That's just part of all of these proposals, and we're in the conversation on that right now. So if you know good folks, stay tuned. But I think more broadly in terms of how quickly and the accountability piece, all of that is still very much being discussed and how this actually plays out. And so I think in our September meeting, we'll have a lot more understanding of what it is we are actually implementing and be able to answer that. I think, how quickly things go out very well might be required statutorily. So we'll be keeping an eye on that and thinking through how to balance out the accountability piece. I will say, for HAP 2, we were really happy that there was additional language added in statute to try to increase some accountability around goals that communities are having. Mm-hmm. That does slow down the process of getting money out though. And so you are sort of having a bit of a balance where we were engaging with communities a lot more frequently. We had to request amendments from many communities to get to sort of more meaningful goals. And so sometimes those two things of accountability and expediency are a little bit at odds, and we need to balance that appropriately as we move forward. So we're keeping that in mind. We have a lot of lessons learned from HAP 2 that I think we're ready to implement in whatever comes down this next round. But just like you, we're waiting to see how those devils and the details actually play out.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ellie. I mean, I guess maybe we can discuss this at the September or even maybe the January meeting. I do want to encourage the council that if we do get an ongoing source that's significant for the state of California, which will be the first time, that does change, in my opinion, the leverage we have as a council that the state has with working with communities, particularly counties who, we know who they are, who don't partner well with their cities or who don't allocate the resources well to really create population level reductions in homelessness. An ongoing source gives us a lot more leverage to hold those counties accountable. And so I do hope that since I believe we will be getting an ongoing source of funding that counties can count on year over year, I hope that we can have a conversation about how we move that for some of the counties within the state who might be putting resources into solutions that won't really lead to population level reductions. Thank you. And that concludes my comments and questions.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you. And I very much appreciate the point that you made. I took note of your request to have this for our next meeting. Definitely, I think we agree. I think it is an important conversation to be had. And I also think that the tools that we've rolled out through HCFC, the Homeless Data Integration System, will be also a very important tool and a data set that will help inform where we're at, the baseline, so that as we begin to think about accountability, progress, and metrics, or metrics and progress, I should say, that we have a common database, a common language to go from. Because I think the challenge is not having not having sort of a common information to it's a sort of a starting point, but also maybe I'll stop there because I think there's a lot more that could be said in this space. So I very much value the fact that you have brought this up. I think we had another raised hand. Jennifer, we'll go to you.
Thank you, Secretary. Have we had formal listening sessions to get feedback from the communities about how the previous funding streams have gone? And the reason I'm asking that is, I know at least for us in Santa Clara County, some little tweaks would have made us be able to be way more effective, right? And so are we asking communities to be able to weigh in so that as we're rolling out, it's sort of this unprecedented new, this amazing amounts of money, right? It's like the responsibility is even heightened to make sure that we're actually deploying it. We've had a lot of challenges with rent relief as an example. And so we want to make sure that we're able to deploy. So it may be, if I missed it at one of these council meetings, then please tell me that I missed it. But it would be, I think it'd be good to hear feedback from communities about what would be the way to what we could do to administer or whatever. That could be tweaks within what's being allocated, but could just make it a little bit easier or a little bit more flexible.
I can just quickly, Gail, Jennifer, I don't think we've done formal listening sessions. I think one of our hopes around that state funding working group we're getting off the ground is that is all state programs, and that would be the kind of opportunity where you'd have that set of folks to be able to start to do some of that work. I totally agree. I think most of at least, and I'll only speak for HCFC's funding stream, I think Zach, you all might do some of this work as well, but that we're doing it in a more informal way, just as we're talking to grantees, which I appreciate isn't quite the level of formality that might be required. I think it's a good point.
It's more just about us being able to hear the feedback. And I think that could help us shape thinking going forward. And so I haven't gotten to hear that from other communities. So I would definitely be interested. So if there's things that if there's informal ways that you're doing that we could listen in on, that would be something I'd be happy to do as well.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Any other comments or questions? Okay, if not, thank you so much. Well, we're going to go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda, which is a legislative report. This is also an opportunity for us to get an update from Miles White, our Assistant Director of Legislation here at BCSH. And Jeannie McKendry, the HCFC Legislative Specialist. If you all are on the line, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over.
Hi, thank you, Secretary. Hi, this is Jeannie McKendry. Miles is actually not with us today. He got pulled into a fire, so I'll be making the presentation today. As the Secretary said, I serve as the Legislative Specialist with the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council, and I'm here today to provide a brief overview of some current legislative bills. So in addition to the many exciting homelessness proposals in the state budget that you've heard about today and we've been talking about, the council also continues to work with the legislature on ways to further the administration's homelessness agenda through policy bills. So while many bills have been introduced this legislative session so far to address the crisis of homelessness, I'm just going to give a quick overview of 3 bills that have a direct impact on this council. Generally, these bills aim to increase the ability of the council to effectively coordinate and evaluate the statewide efforts to prevent and end homelessness. Before I get started, I want to remind folks this is just a current snapshot of these bills. They're still working their way through the legislative process, so further amendments are possible, but we're really excited to continue tracking these bills and see what happens. Next slide, please, Evan. All right, our first bill here is AB 816. I think Miles went over this briefly at the last council meeting. This is introduced by Assembly Member Chu and others. It's titled State and Local Agencies Homelessness Plan. The intent of this bill is to reduce homelessness by 90% and to completely eliminate racial disparities among people experiencing homelessness by the end of this decade. The bill requires the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council to complete a statewide needs and gaps analysis and requires local jurisdictions and the Department of Housing and Community Development to use that analysis to set benchmark goals towards reducing homelessness locally and statewide. The bill also establishes a Housing and Homelessness Inspector General within the Department of HCD, who would be kind of the enforcement arm. The Inspector General could monitor and audit the implementation of these plans, provide support with technical assistance, as well as pursue legal action against jurisdictions that don't meet their stated goals towards ending homelessness. Next slide, please, Evan. All right, next we have AB 977, which was introduced by Assembly Members Gabriel and Petrie Norris. It's Homelessness Program Data Reporting, Homelessness Management Information Systems. The intent of this bill is to improve the accuracy and availability of statewide homelessness data and to develop accountability measures to better inform fiscal and policy decisions statewide. The bill would require that specified homelessness programs report client data into the HMIS as a condition of receiving state funds. This bill would also require COCs to continue to share their HMIS data with the council going forward for purposes of continuing to populate the statewide homeless data integration system, which we've already talked about. So. Lastly, this bill would require the council to collect, compile, and report out on fiscal data for all state-funded homelessness programs. Next slide, please. I think this is the last bill we're going to cover. AB 1220 was introduced by Assembly Member Luz Rivas. It is California Interagency Council on Homelessness. This bill proposes to make several administrative changes to this council. First, it renames the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council to the California Interagency Council on Homelessness and adds 5 departments to the council's membership, including the Department of Public Health, the Department of Aging, the Department of Rehabilitation, the Department of State Hospitals, and the Workforce Development Board. So a lot of great new members potentially on the council. The bill also establishes an advisory committee with specified stakeholders, including those with lived experience that the council would be required to meet with regularly. Lastly, this bill mandates that state agencies or departments that administer state homelessness programs participate in council work groups and provide the council relevant information regarding their programs. So again, these bills are all still a work in progress, but we're excited to see where they go, and we'll keep tracking them and give you updates as they on these bills probably regularly every quarterly meeting. So that's my last slide, but we did also want to give a quick federal update. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on the federal level around homelessness as well. The Biden administration has been very busy and has shown a lot of interest in increasing investment towards solving homelessness on the national level. So we're really excited about this and hope to see this positive trend continue. So we just wanted to give you a quick update on a couple of things that are going on, and we'll probably continue to give brief federal updates at these meetings as well going forward. So back in March, $5 million was included for emergency housing voucher programs under the American Rescue Plan. So housing authorities have already applied for this first round of vouchers, and allocations have been made. I know there's already been a lot of great work done across some council departments on these emergency housing vouchers with public housing authorities. Specifically, CDSS, HCFC, and HCD did some direct outreach on these and are working closely with our HUD counterparts on this. So it's really exciting. So just wanted to flag that. That's been happening. Overall, the current Biden administration's proposed 2022 budget includes a request of $68.7 billion for the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, which is a 9.1 billion or 15% increase from its 2021 funding. And there's two main homelessness requests in that federal budget, proposed federal budget, that I'll just touch on real briefly. First, the Biden administration is proposing to further expand the housing vouchers in the 2022 budget. The request proposes to provide $30.4 billion for housing choice vouchers nationwide, expanding vital housing assistance for an estimated 200,000 additional individuals or families. Again, these vouchers are in addition to the $5 billion that I just talked about. Also within this proposed budget increase, the Biden administration is proposing to increase funding for homelessness assistance grants, or nicely called HAG, by $500 million in 2022. This requested increase of $500 million over the 21 enacted level would total $3.5 billion to support more than 100,000 additional households, including survivors of domestic violence and homeless youth. So HAGs, or I just can't call them that, homeless assistance grants, fund COC and ESG programs, and they are successfully used in hundreds of American communities. So we're really excited to see about the proposed increase there. And lastly, I'm trying to blast through these. I don't want to take too much time up here, but lastly, we wanted to give a quick update on some administrative changes at the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, or USICH. USICH includes 19 federal member agencies and works to coordinate and catalyze the federal response to homelessness. So they held their first meeting during the Biden administration on May 27th, and they selected new leadership. So Marcia Fudge, the Secretary of HUD, was elected as the USICH chair, and Dennis McDonough, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, was elected as the USICH vice chair. So the council elects new leaderships from its membership on an annual basis. So these are just new elections we wanted to highlight for you. So that's it for me. I think we're happy to take any questions.
Jeannie, thank you. That was a very good report. Let's just open it up and see if council members have any questions of Jeannie or any comments.
Oh, okay.
No questions. All right. Yeah. Good job, Jeannie. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the next item on our agenda. This is item number 7, and this is a presentation by Lindsay Tornatore. She's our newest, one of our newest council members, and ready to already begin with a presentation on the California Department of Education, really, the focus on authentic stakeholder engagement as they determine and prioritize the American Rescue Plan funds. Lindsay, thank you so much for bringing this, request. I think that this is exactly what, the council wants to continue to encourage, right? To be able to use this time when we come together to share more detail, but also to invite members of the stakeholder community to be more involved and engaged. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Secretary, and good afternoon, everyone. As Secretary Ramirez said, my name is Lindsay Tornatore. I am the Director of the Student Achievement and Support Division at the California Department of Education. And joined with me today is my colleague, Mindy Parsons, who is the Administrator of the Integrated Student Support and Programs Office within our division at the department. And she oversees our McKinney-Vento program, all of our support for LEAs around supporting students experiencing homelessness, in addition to also supporting foster youth and also our students who are American Indian. So Mindy is joined with me and is going to co-present. Coming to us soon will be Joseph Sines, who is our federal policy liaison. We're doing great with time, everybody. We're a little ahead of schedule. So I just texted him to jump on, and if not, I'll cover his content for him. And I know Mindy is here. Okay, so if we could go to the next slide, please. So we're state agencies, right? And so we love our acronyms, but just to make sure everyone is on the same page, a few acronyms that we will be saying throughout the presentation. HCY refers to our Homeless Children and Youth Program, which is called out in the ARP, the American Rescue Plan Act. ESSER 3, which is, as you hear correctly, the third of the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. You will hear ESSER 3 and ARP in tandem because they are one and the same. LEA, Local Educational Agency, is a term that we use at the department when we are referring to county offices of education, districts, individual schools, charter schools. And SEA, State Education Agency, that is us, the Department of Education. And we also work closely with the United States Department of Education. All right, next slide, please. So in this brief, about 25-minute item, we're going to share an update on McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. During the last council meeting, I gave an update that for the upcoming 21 through 24 funding cycle, we were in the process of reviewing applications. Mindy is here and she's going to give some more information on the results of those applications. Then also Mindy will share some background on the Homeless Children and Youth Funds, which are included in the American Rescue Plan Act. And all of this kind of ties together because later this summer, we are, as a state agency, are going to be asked to submit a plan to the United States Department of Education of how the state agency is going to allocate, spend, help LEAs spend and support LEAs in the spending of their ARP HCY funds in the coming years. And then once Joe joins us, he's also joining us to give a little high-level summary background on the American Rescue Plan ESSER 3 program, because that's kind of the umbrella where the HCY funds fall under. And then also in the immediate future, we have an ask for all of you and a call to action for all of us to engage in. All right, so the next slide, please. And now I'm going to pass this over to my colleague, Mindy Parsons, to take us through some updates on McKinney-Vento and background of the Homeless Children and Youth Funds.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hi, so again, my name is Mindy Parsons. Thank you so much for having us here today. So the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act is the federal legislation that all LEAs must follow and implement. And when we refer to LEAs, we mean school districts, charter schools, and county offices of education. The McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act ensures that students experiencing homelessness are provided with the educational rights and protections afforded to them. Some of those educational rights include right to immediate enrollment, right to remain in their school of origin, and comparable services such as transportation. Currently, the California Department of Education receives $12 million annually of federal funds to implement the Educating Homeless Children and Youth Fund, referred to as EHCY. After a competitive grant process, we selected 121 LEAs that will receive these supplemental funds to implement an EHCY program in their district and or in their county. And please know that regardless of funds, all LEAs must implement and abide by the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. Next slide, please. So LEAs have the LEAs that have been selected to receive EHCY funds can use these funds to support children and youth experiencing homelessness with identification, enrollment, transportation, mentoring, academic support, and to provide wraparound services. LEAs can also use these funds to develop before and after school programs, enrichment programs, and create professional development opportunities for staff. The CDE has a number of resources available on its website that includes additional information about McKinney-Vento law, training modules, guidance and toolkits, identification sample documents, and more. Every local educational agency must have a homeless liaison that supports children and families experiencing homelessness, and you can find the contact information for each of those homeless liaisons located on that site. So next slide, please. Well, in April of 2021, the U.S. Department of Education reserved $800 million of ESSER to support the American Rescue Plan Homeless Children and Youth Fund. The California Department of Education received $98 million of those funds to allocate to our LEAs. The ARP HCY program is comprised of two allocations, ARP Homeless 1 and ARP Homeless 2. The CDE just received the ARP Homeless One funds in the amount of approximately $24 million. Of the $24 million, the department can reserve up to $6 million for state level activities, and the remaining funds will be allocated to LEAs that will be implementing an EHCY grant. And like Lindsay mentioned, the CDE is waiting for additional guidance from the U.S. Department of Education regarding the Homeless II funds and how these funds should be allocated. We do know that the U.S. Department of Education wants us to get these additional funds out to LEAs quickly in order to help students experiencing homelessness re-engage in summer, before and after school programs, enrichment programs, and more importantly, to help identify families that we may not have identified during the pandemic. Next slide, please. LEAs may use their ARP Homeless One funds necessary to facilitate the identification, enrollment, retention, and educational success of homeless children and youth. Some of these include assisting with identification efforts, providing wraparound services and referrals to housing, medical, and other necessary services, provide transportation to enable children and youth to attend in school, provide in-person instruction and enrichment programs. And lastly, LEAs could collaborate and even contract with community-based organizations to provide academic support, trauma-informed care, social emotional support, and mental health services. Again, these are just a few ways or ideas that our LEAs can spend these additional supplemental ARP Homeless One funds. Lindsay will now share with you the guidance that we received from the U.S. Department of Education regarding the ARP HCY plan and the requirements that states have to do in order to receive their ARP Homeless II funds. Lindsay?
Thanks, Mindy. And if we could please go to the next slide. So as Mindy mentioned, we are waiting for more guidance around our Homeless II funds, the remainder of the allocation California received, before we are able to allocate those out. But one thing we do know for sure is that before California will receive that remaining amount of money, the California Department of Education, or the state education agency, needs to put together a plan that will describe to the Department of Education how we are going to do the following things in the bullets: provide training and technical assistance and capacity building and engagement at the state and LEA levels, how we are going to support LEAs to increase access to summer programming wraparound services, especially LEAs who have not received an EHCY subgrant in the past, to ensure these LEAs are well prepared to utilize the funds provided in Homeless II. And that's important to point out because Homeless One was allocated out based on McKinney-Vento formula. So of the recipients of McKinney-Vento funds, they received the Homeless One funds for the ESSER 3 funds. But for the Homeless II allocation, that's not the case. It's going to be also LEAs who have not received McKinney-Vento in the past. Also, in this plan, we will need to describe how we will use state level activities funds to award subgrants or contracts to community-based organizations in historically underserved populations and connect them to educational related support and wraparound services. And then also, in summation, encourage LEAs to award contracts to community-based organizations to help identify and support historically underserved populations experiencing homelessness. And this is really exciting because this is with COVID, the silver lining of COVID. It has opened a lot of opportunities for a lot of cross-agency, cross-community work that has not been in the past. And as we know, our system wasn't perfect before COVID. And so this is an opportunity to use these funds to build towards something better and more equitable for everyone. And so the call to action we're asking all of you council members and members of the public who are here today is we are going to be sending out more information this summer. We have a link towards the end of this slide on how to join our listserv. Please join our listserv. Once we have our draft plan, we will be sending it out via the listserv announcement, and also it will be posted on our webpage, and we will be asking for public input. And this is where we can use all of your expertise in helping us think about the best ways to do these things for our students experiencing homelessness. So to give a really another holistic view and to tie in the feedback that you will potentially give us for the homeless children and youth funds for our plan, we actually have another plan that's in the immediate forefront that we're working on now. And my colleague Joe Sines is here. He is our federal policy liaison at the Department of Education. He's going to explain the work that we at the Department of Education are doing right now to put together our American Rescue Plan American Rescue Plan state education plan to support LEAs for our ESSER 3 funds. And so the reason that this is relevant to all of you is because we see these two plans, the Homeless Children and Youth Fund Plan and the current ARP SEA plan, as tying together. So I will pass it to Joe.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, and thank you everyone for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you today. So if we can go to the next slide, I will get started. Okay, and so just some background on the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief 3 Fund. So on the federal level, it's being called ARP ESSER or ESSER ARP. But many states are calling it ESSER 3 because before we officially got that name, it was the third round of ESSER funding. So you'll see those used interchangeably just in case, just to avoid any confusion. So it was enacted on March 11, 2021 through the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. Nearly $122 billion were put into this fund. California's allocation was just over $15 billion with over $13.5 billion scheduled to go to LEAs through Title 1A formula. This does not include the Homeless Children and Youth Fund grant that was spoke of a little bit earlier by my colleagues. But the big pictures of this, we're working on our state plan, which we'll talk about a little bit more, but LEAs also are required to submit plans for safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services, and also an expenditure plan. Both these plans do require stakeholder input and public comment. Also, both plans do deal with how LEAs will provide services to homeless students. So that's another place where people can provide public comment, have some input, and be working with their local LEAs on how best to provide for this population. So I think we see it as a real opportunity to, spread the message of what our homeless students' needs are. And it gives everyone a real opportunity to get involved with kind of defining as to what their local LEA will provide for those students, what the expectations are, and what funds will be used for. So for more information on that and kind of the details on these plans, you can go to the link that's provided. We have tons of resources. Also on there is our email, edrelieffunds@cde.ca.gov. We happy to field questions in there. We have a team of people working on this. So next slide, please. And then kind of the big showpiece of our presentation today is the ARP ESSER 3 SEA plan. So that's the state plan that we're required to submit. So the CDE team has been working on this, coming up with a draft soon. This requires that we develop it in meaningful consultation with stakeholders, including specified groups. And also we provide the public an opportunity to provide input and take that input into account. A lot of the themes are identifying the needs of students, that includes homeless students, how we'll coordinate funds for students, which includes homeless students. So there is a large portion in there where the current administration wants to see kind of how we're addressing the needs of this population, what type of outreach is being done, what kind of resources are we using at both the state and the federal level. So it's not just looking at these funds, it's how are you coordinating previous federal funds? How are you coordinating your state funds? And also how are you coordinating any reserve funds that could impact this population? Because the ESSER fund has a 10% reserve for states that goes out through the budget process, but there are some defined uses for ESSER 3. But it gives a holistic view on what we're doing to support certain student populations, and like I said, the homeless students populations. So we will be taking public comment, and that's where I really would hope you would want to get involved with at the State Board of Education meeting on July 14th and 15th. Like I said, I think we're hoping to hear from a lot of our stakeholder groups and those wanting to provide public comment, because this impacts our plan. So we're required to take that comment and use it to build out on our plan and put it together. So there's more information at the link provided below. Also, if you want to give public comment, the email address, and which I'll put in the chat, is sbe@cde.ca.gov, that you can put in advance of the hearing. So a really great opportunity to do so, to give us your input and to be a part of, the future of our state and how we use these funds, especially for our homeless student population. And next slide.
Yeah, so thank you, Joe, for joining us. And we just wanted to pause if anyone has any questions about either of the ARP, about either of the programs.
Thank you, Lindsay and Mindy and Joe. Just let's open it up. Any council members have questions? Did I lost my view of everyone? So if you have a question, just chime in.
While we wait, we give a good Zoom pause. We put in some links into the chat for attendees and panelists. And also please note the link to sign up for our homeless education listserv is in there as well.
Lindsay, I don't see anyone. I don't see that. Any questions? Going once, twice. Okay. Well, thank you again. Thank you, Lindsay, to you and to your team. And
I'm sorry, Secretary, we have one more slide if we could.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is a very exciting slide that we want to make sure that we share with. If we could go to the last slide. So we are very excited to announce that we are going to be hosting a Educating California's Children and Youth Experiencing Homelessness conference from identification to implementation. So again, please save the date, mark your calendar. And if there are other questions, maybe from members of the public too, please reach out to us. You can reach us by accessing our CDE homeless education web pages, and also our email addresses there too. We're happy to answer comment questions. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you. And we will have under item number 9, the opportunity for public comment. And so I'm sure that members of the audience may have some comments to offer with regard to the presentation. So again, appreciate your presentation, and let's really take advantage of the opportunity to provide some feedback as was mentioned here by Lindsay and the team. And moving on, item number 8. Future meeting agendas. This is an opportunity for council members to propose topics or items for future meetings. As a reminder, under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, if anyone raises an issue on the matter that's not included in today's agenda, the council is not able to discuss the matter in a public setting. It must be agendized. So this is our opportunity to be able to identify items that you would like to see in the future. So let me go ahead and open it up and see if we have any recommendations or comments.
I'll go ahead if I think Donald reminded me of it, and I've been thinking about it for a while. But and then the conversation earlier about accountability and how the funds are being coordinated to different counties, and I think it might be worthwhile to talk about Prop 63, the Mental Health Services Act. I think I don't understand a lot about that act and how that might fit in with this group and the efforts that we're doing, but would love to learn more about it. I don't know if there's someone that we can reach out to provide a better overview of that program.
Thank you, Russ. We'll take note of that and follow up. Thank you. And Gail, I'll just mention that, you brought up a request to agendize for a future meeting, this discussion around accountability. And so we also have that here, and we'll make sure to also follow up.
Thank you.
Okay, any other items? Okay, we're making good time. So this is, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, item number 9, which is the opportunity for us to hear from the public. And so I will go ahead and turn this over to Evan to just walk us through the manner in which, members of the audience can join us for this portion of the agenda.
Absolutely. Thank you, Secretary. So members of the public who wish to make a comment on any item to this council, you may press the raised hand icon on your Zoom meeting window screen. Take a moment to locate that. Or if you're connected by telephone only, you can press *9 to indicate that you'd like to comment. You'll have up to 3 minutes to make your comment, at which time I'll let you know your time is complete. I'll ask you to finish your sentence, and we will move on to the next comment. So it looks like our first comment here is from Helene Schneider. So Helene, you have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. And hello, everyone. Good to hear your voices and hear the good report. My name is Helene Schneider. I'm the regional coordinator for the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. And thank you for bringing up the updates of our first council meeting, where we have appointed HUD Secretary Fudge and VA Secretary McDonough as our chair and vice chair for this year. We're very excited about that. The council is looking to have another meeting soon to keep moving forward on its process of updating again our federal strategic plan and really implementing the priorities from the Biden-Harris administration as it relates to housing and homelessness. I just also wanted to mention some great feedback I received from all over the state when I talked to community members and local leaders of the need for and requests that we continue working together as federal and state partners in leveraging and braiding all these different funding strategies that come about. And the document that you and your staff put together last summer when the CARES Act was implemented to show which funding from which bucket can go to what purpose and how to blend and integrate federal and state funding and prioritize them was very well received, I know, by people within California, but also amongst my colleagues in Washington, D.C., seeing that as a great document that could be shared in other states as a model. So as we look into new opportunities when your state budget gets finalized and funding that may be coming through our federal agencies as well, I encourage you to continue that work and just want to give some positive feedback and thank you. So I hope once again we get to meet in person soon now that the state has opened up quite a bit. And please always feel free to reach out to me as your federal partner on homelessness. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Helena, so much for joining us. It's always great to hear from our federal partners, and and thank you also for the feedback. We will definitely follow up.
Next, we have a comment from Teddy Pierce.
Thank you. And good afternoon to everybody on the meeting today. My name is Teddy Pierce. I live in Northern California and I'm an independent HMIS consultant, currently working with Lake County, California. Of course, I'd like to start by saying I'm thrilled with everything HDIS and look forward to how that's going to mature and develop. But today I'd really like to do a shout out and thank you for the state sponsorship of the Rapid Results Institute, the 100-Day Challenge program. Lake County has been participating in cohort 3, and I can't overstate how helpful this initiative has been for this rural COC area. They've been committed to compliance, but now at this early stage, they're able to experience firsthand the impact side of our work. I've seen that a number of COCs know how to operationalize strategies outside of the policy framework. And what I've experienced with Lake County as a data bystander is their excitement and their engagement in the learning, the goal setting, project management, and feedback looping in a very lighthearted, non-confrontational environment. I'm really thrilled with this investment, and I'm very happy to be able to be a part of that with them. So thank you again for putting this forward.
Thank you for your comment. Next in line, we have a comment from Joe Coletti. Joe, you have 3 minutes to make your comment. Joe Coletti, if you're there, you may unmute.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Good afternoon. My comments are in regards to agenda item number 3, which focused on the action plan. It is my understanding that council members received a letter from the Southern California Continuum of Care Alliance, which I submitted on behalf of the Alliance prior to this meeting. The Southern California COC Alliance recognizes the significant progress the council has made to date concerning the recently adopted action plan. But the Alliance respectfully requests that the importance of trauma-informed design and care be highlighted in the action plan as a key strategy among the state's homelessness strategies. Currently, the word trauma only appears once, noted as trauma-informed, in the entire recently adopted action plan. As you know, the cumulative effect of traumatic experiences has left many a person languishing on the streets in a constant state of survival. You may know that nearly 4 persons had died, on the streets of LA County, daily, every day. During 2020, 1 person a day in the streets of Orange County. Other counties have alarming rates as well. You may know that SAMHSA, under the Health and Human Services, has put together a model and has delivered a trauma-informed design and care model that has become increasingly understood and implemented as a best practice by other public and private homeless service providers during the past decade. The action plan has a section that notes, quote, expand state communications efforts to create public awareness of the state's homelessness strategies. So how about expanding the state communications efforts to create public awareness of trauma-informed care and design as one of the state's homelessness strategies? Please note in the letter that we submitted on page 2, focuses on expanding state communications efforts to create more public awareness about trauma-informed design and care by adding some language on pages 9, 21, and 34 in the action plan, which, you take it as suggestions. So lastly, again, how about expanding the state communication?
Thank you, Mr. Coletti. Your time is complete. Please make any final comment.
Awareness of trauma-informed care and design as one of the state's homelessness strategies. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And in reference to Mr. Coletti's comment, we did receive a written public comment that was shared with the council prior to this meeting. That public comment is available upon request to any member of the public who would wish to view it. Next, we have a public comment from Kathy Nye. Kathy, you have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Hi, I just wanted to say how wonderful the presentation by Lindsay was. I am a McKinney-Vento liaison at the Ventura County Office of Ed, a recipient of the initial EHYC or CY grant, as well as the ARP HCY1 supplement. And I'm very excited about the things we're going to be doing in Ventura County to support our 6,800 students that live in homelessness situations here in our county. And I'd just comment on Mr. Coletti's. I didn't follow all of it, but at least in Ventura County, we take trauma-informed education very seriously, have had extensive training in trauma-informed care to educators throughout our county for over the last 2 or 3 years, and are continuing to expand that for not only homelessness, but also our youth that are in foster care in our community. So that's all I wanted to share. Just wanted to ask if Lindsay would be able to share the link to those slides. It's great information to take out to my community and to upper administration as I move forward with the receipt of the GAN letters, the receipt of the funds, and planning progressive and new programs in our community to help those children and the littles that are not enrolled in school yet in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm not seeing any more comments at this time. Secretary, I'm not sure if you'd like to give a moment, if anyone would like to raise their hand. Looks like we do have one more comment that just came in, as I was saying. So Denise Jacques or Jacques, you have 3 minutes to make your comment. Oh, excuse me, it's giving me an error. One moment, please. All right, looks like Denise will temporarily join as a panelist and be able to, be able to make her comments. So Denise, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. I've enjoyed this very much, but my concerns have to do with oversight and accountability. I've seen a lot of profiteering in California and San Francisco specifically around homelessness. The city director of the homelessness program earned almost $1 million in 3 years. My current landlord CEO made over $300,000 in the last, publicly available salary information. And these are, government supported nonprofits. So I'm very concerned about oversight, not only on the financial side, but also on the services side, where I have found that subsidized housing tenants are often treated as second-class citizens, and property management has minimal contract monitoring, and the contract monitors seem to be in the pocket of the people who are receiving the money. So anyway, that's my concern, that this program, which has great potential, would be, designed and evaluated and administered with a lens of justice for the taxpayers and people in need, including, of course, children and families. Anyway, thank you. It's encouraging, but I'm very concerned about the exploitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. It looks like we have one additional public comment online. We have James, no, sorry, there was a hand up that just went back down. So I'm not seeing any additional public comments at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Evan. And again, thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you for your public comments. We will certainly follow up on the items that came up during the public comment portion. I do want to also share that the materials for this meeting, along with the meeting summary, will be posted on the council's website prior to the September meeting. And also, if you would like to sign up for the HCFC listserv, where we're able to transmit and provide information, updates on HCFC activities. Please, go to our website at ecsh.ca.gov/HCFC. It's on the the slide here. There is a way to sign up so that you will be listed on our communication moving forward. We also, of course, use social media, Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, especially for those of you that are interested in career opportunities with HCFC. So please, continue to stay involved and engaged. I will mention that during the course of our meeting, the president announced the signing of a bill basically making Juneteenth a national holiday. And so this Saturday, June the 19th, we will be celebrating Juneteenth. Again, this is really incredible, and really an opportunity for us to reflect on the history of slavery, the long history of struggle by our brothers and sisters of the Black American community, and really, I think, an opportunity to again acknowledge the importance of continuing to create spaces to address racial inequities and the importance of doubling down in all that we do to ensure that we're addressing disparities, that we are furthering our goals around building an economic recovery that is focused on equity, inclusion, and acknowledging that during this devastating pandemic, that there were communities that were hit harder than others. And so the investments need to reflect that level of recognition. Thank you all for the work that you're doing. Thank you for the really thorough and comprehensive reports that you've provided. Our next council meeting is scheduled for September the 22nd from 1 to 4. And we hope to see you in September. In the meantime, be well, be safe, and thank you again for your work every single day. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This meeting is adjourned.